So let's review some of the concepts we saw while creating a very simple project. First, we saw that there are various transaction types associated with projects. The transaction types are hours. The business document that would typically input hours into the system would be a timesheet. We saw an example of that using the hour journal. Examples of the kinds of activities that happen that result in these kinds of transactions would be the labor involved with consulting or installation or other task work. We also saw that there's an expense transaction type. Typically, that an expense report would be filed by an employee. We've got a module on that coming up. This would be an example of purchasing plane tickets or hotel accommodations or other expenses incurred during execution of the project. We also saw that there's a fee journal that allows you to enter fees against the project. This would be things such as surcharges or deliverables or other fees that are needed to be billed during the project. We'll look at fees during the billing module. We saw that there's item transactions. This would be the inclusion of transactions to sell or consume items as a part of the project, and this would be things like supplies that you may be using or subcontracted services or other materials that are used in execution of the project. There's a fifth transaction type called on account that we'll learn more about when we get to fixed price projects and also to invoicing, that is used for prepayments and for scheduled payments and other aspects in the system. Some further concepts that we looked at in that project creation section were journals. So I mentioned that timesheets and expense reports are the typical business documents to put transactions on the system. There's also journals. So we looked at those just four basic journal types that we have in the product. And finally, we looked at project stage. So you'll note that I had to put the project into in process in order to enter transactions. That's just one of several stages that a project can be in throughout its life cycles. It can be first in the created, and then estimated, and then scheduled, and then moved to in process, and then finally finished. In addition to that, there are 3 additional user-defined stages that you can configure. These stages also control what actions can be done at each stage during the project, and the permissions of which actions can be done can be configured. Let's take a quick look at how that's done in the product. To configure the project stages, under Setup, you open Project Management and Accounting Parameters. In the parameters, you'll see here that there's a Project Stage tab, and this shows the project stages that I mentioned. For various project types, you can configure which stages are applicable, and here are the 3 user-defined stages that I mentioned. You can name those to be however you please. Within each stage, for instance in the created stage, there are a set of rules about exactly what, for this particular project type and in this particular stage, which different activities are allowed to be performed. Finally, we saw project categories. So in my entry of an hour transaction onto the project, you saw that I used project management as the project category. We'll learn more about configuring project categories during the basic accounting module later on, but at a high level, project category enables people to classify revenues and expenses on projects. This provides the project manager insight as to where the efforts and materials and expenses are being expended on the project. For instance, you might have project management versus development versus testing as various project categories under labor for a software development company. The project category can also impact how transactions are posted to the general ledger. Categories also form the basis of what the cost price and the sales price is for different work, materials, or labor in the system. These categories are based on a global shared category concept that works across legal entities. So if you use the same categories across various subsidiaries in your organization, you can define those once and use them as appropriate within those legal entities. They're also used across different modules. So the same categories can be applied to expense, project, or the production module. Let's go back into the product and see how these project categories are configured. To set up project categories, under Setup, open the Categories node, and you'll see the shared categories that I mentioned before. So shared categories is that global concept across all legal entities that are configured in the system. If I create one here, let's call it Learning Test, I can then use this category in different modules and different legal entities in the system. So let's say that my learning test was applicable to project transactions and expense transactions, or in this case, let's just use project transactions. Then we'll see how you create an individual category within this legal entity for projects to use that. I'll open up project categories here, and if I create a new project category, then from this drop-down list, we'll see our learning test category. I can select that and say that that category group is a part of my project hours. So each category must live within a category group, and that category group also dictates how transactions are posted to the general ledger. So let's close out of here and review that we have shared categories that are global and then individual project categories that are exposed either to production, expense, or project management. So returning back to our concepts, let's have a look at how these map out. At the high level, we have transaction types. This was our hours, our items, or our... let's return back to the concepts here.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Let's unfold your arms. You just sound so much better.
Yeah.
Okay, whenever you're ready.
So let's return back to our concepts here. At the top level, we have transaction types. This was either hours, items, or expenses in the examples we've been looking at. Beneath that, we saw that there are category groups. So these logically group our categories together. For example, if I were looking at expense transactions, I might have a category groups dividing my project categories into transportation and accommodation. The next level is project category, where we hold our cost price and our sales price, and where our individual transactions indicate what project category they're associated with. In this example, under transportation, I might have planes, trains, and taxis. And those project categories, in turn, are based on a set of shared categories that are available across modules and across legal entities.